Let's read in Ephesians chapter 6. We're continuing to look at this chapter in our study of Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 6, and we're going to be looking at verses 5 through 9. Worship is relatively easy on a Sunday. We have a day set apart for it. We have services organized to help us in it. We are freed, most of us, from our work so that we can worship on Sunday. Worship on Sunday is relatively easy. Not so easy come Monday morning, is it? When we open the computer and there's all the emails. When we know there's a project that's had lots of problems. When we have to deal with a difficult work situation. When we have to do the same thing as we did last week and the week before and the week before. When we have to face maybe injustice and unfairness at work. When we feel we're not being stretched, our talents are not being used. Monday makes worship difficult. And one of the great challenges the Christian has is trying to connect worship on Sunday to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And it's not a new problem. It's a problem that the church also encountered in the 1500s. Believe it or not, the time of the Reformation. At the time of the Reformation, the Roman Catholic Church had been teaching for many centuries that salvation was by works. And the more holy the work, the more likely you were to be saved. And therefore it wasn't a surprise that people tended to view church work as very holy work, as very valuable work. And everything else you had to do it to survive, but it wasn't holy, it wasn't related to the Christian life. And so there was this big separation between the sacred, pastors, priests, missionaries, people who worked in the church, the sacred and the secular, everybody else. One of the things that the Reformation did was they came along and said, first of all, salvation is not by works, it's by grace alone. It's got nothing to do with any sacred work you do for God or any secular work you do for God. None of these things come into salvation. It's all about the Lord's work. And we simply enter into that and rest in it. And as a result, they also taught that there was no separation between sacred work and secular work. It was all sacred. That every part of life could be offered as worship to God. And therefore, people like Luther, people like Calvin, they taught that having a calling as a carpenter, a farmer, a mother, was as sacred, as holy, as God-honoring as it is to be a priest, to be a pastor, to be a worker in the church, a missionary. Because it wasn't about what you did. It was about who you did it for. And so we come to our own day, and although it's a different context, we still face this challenge of breaking down the wall between Sunday and the rest of the week, between worship and work. And like the reformers, we can break down that wall. We can end that separation by reminding ourselves again that it's not so much, or at least not first and foremost, about what we do, but it's about who we do it for. And the way we do that is not bringing worship down to the level of work, but bringing work up to the level of worship. And that's exactly what Paul teaches in the passage that we're looking at today. To worship. How can I turn my Monday to Saturday into Sunday, as it were? Or how can I bring Sunday into Monday to Saturday? How can my everyday work, whatever that is, become worship? And the answer verses. Okay, I won't touch it. So in our passage, I've underlined the key phrases here, which remind us it's not so much what you do, but who you do it for. And so we have bond servants, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart, as you would Christ. Not by the way of eye service as people pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord, and not to man, knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or is free. And then in the next slide, masters are addressed. Masters, do the same to them. Bring the same principles into your role as an employer. And stop your threatening, knowing that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven. So you see here, Paul is reframing work by threading through it the idea that work is transformed into worship when it is done for the Lord. So let's see how he breaks that down as we look here, first of all, at employees. And the message in these verses is employees work all in for Christ. You might say, I don't see employees here. I see bond servants or slaves. That's true. Obviously, being an employee today is different to being a bond servant or a slave in that culture. But the principles are the same. If slaves in their very difficult work situation were to do what Paul commands, how much more we, who are in a much simpler and easier work setting. So how are employees to work all in for Christ? We see, first of all, respect the boss. We serve the Lord by respecting the one in authority over us in our area of employment. Ephesians 6:5 says, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling. You remember when we looked at children, their first duty was obey their parents, the one in authority over them. And here, again, employees are reminded that their first duty, the first word that should come into our minds when we go to work is obey. Imagine a setting where you've got a landowner, very wealthy person. They decides he's going to put a building up there to expand his business, and he employs a foreman, and the foreman gets employees to come and help him as a member of this team to build this building. And so the owner gives the foreman a plan, and the plan is laid out in front of the employees, and each person is given their duty. Imagine if every carpenter, electrician, bricklayer, whoever says, that's a great plan, I've got a better one, and go and do their own thing. Follow their own ideas, their own will. You have utter chaos, don't you? And so here, we serve the Lord, first and foremost, by obeying our earthly master. And this reminds us also that although there is an earthly master, there is a heavenly one. But the heavenly one is telling us, you can serve me, your heavenly master, by obeying your earthly master, and do so with fear and trembling. And that's not, we have to go into work absolutely terrified of our bosses. No. The word there for fear and the word for trembling is basically respect, or to do something very carefully and conscientiously, not casually, not lackadaisically, not with hardly a thought. No, the commands are to be taken seriously and followed carefully and conscientiously. And then it goes on to say, with a sincere heart. And that's really referring to the integrity of the person working, that it's not just that they are to do it outwardly, correctly, but to bring their heart into line with that, so that their heart is involved in it as well. There's an integrity. As you would Christ. So that the respect for Christ should be reflected in our respect for our earthly bosses. And that word, as you would Christ, it's quite stunning in its standard, isn't it? It's saying respect for Christ should be visible in how you respect your employer. So, first and foremost, serve the Lord by respecting the boss. Secondly, we serve the Lord by working when no one's watching. Ephesians 6:6 says, not by the way of eye service as people pleasers. Again, come back to our building site. We've got electricians, we've got carpenters, we've got cement, concrete guys, and they're putting together this building, but they're also on their phones until the boss appears. Then the phones go away, the tools get picked up, they're working really hard, and then the boss goes away and the phones get picked up again. Or they're working away maybe on something that wood is going to cover, drywall is going to cover. They kind of look around and go, it doesn't really matter. No one's going to see this. No one's going to see the mess of wires. No one's going to see the plumbing here. This looks a bit dodgy. It'll probably leak eventually, but we'll get off with it. We can put some drywall over it. No, it's saying not by way of eye service as people pleasers. And it's not saying it's wrong to please your boss. It's saying making the pleasing of your boss the primary aim is wrong. It's to be done not as a people pleaser, but as a God pleaser who sees us when the boss doesn't, who sees behind the panels, who sees what is hidden, who sees when the boss doesn't see. He says, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but as bond servants of Christ. It's saying, take this identity with you into your work. You're not primarily self-employed or employed by this company or that company. You are primarily a bondservant, a slave of Christ, an employee of Christ. That changes what we do when earthly eyes are not upon us. As bondservants of Christ, he's the boss behind every boss. Then thirdly, we serve the Lord as employees by putting our hearts into it, doing the will of God from the heart. That's just interesting, isn't it? We sometimes think of the will of God as something, again, related to Christian work. You know, if I knew God's will for me, am I called to the ministry? Am I called to be a missionary? Am I called to serve in this Christian place or mission or ministry? And yet here, in the context of being a slave, doing manual work, the apostle speaks of doing the will of God. It's not like the will of God is limited to Christian work. The will of God covers every kind of work. And therefore, whether we are a pastor or a carpenter or a teacher or a nurse or a driver, a landscaper, whatever you are, you can be doing the will of God from the heart, with energy, with enthusiasm. Then, fourthly, we serve the Lord by serving with goodwill. Serving, not sulking. You can have someone who does all these things, but does it resentfully, unhappily, in a kind of coerced way. And he's saying, no, you render service with a good will, with a good aim, with a good intention. Again, as to the Lord and not to man. It's one thing to go around work moping and moaning and complaining and being bitter and spreading that poison, but the Lord sees it. And he says, no, I want you to do it as if I'm there. Would you serve with such an ill will, such a reluctant will, with such a coerced will, if you knew that it was for me and not him or her or them or it? Serve the Lord with good will. Now, this isn't saying we ignore nasty bosses, employers. Of course not. There are limits, of course, to every kind of authority, as has been made clear in the passage dealing with husbands and wives, children and parents. No one is forced to go on suffering the consequences of another sin if they can legitimately be free from it. It's not saying either, though, that every time we encounter some difficulty at work, that we give it in, give it up. It's saying here, render service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man. And then, fifthly, we serve the Lord's employees by letting Christ keep the score. It says, whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord. Again, notice, he's speaking here of ordinary, everyday work in the home, in the office, in the factory, in the field, wherever we are. And he's saying it's good, whatever good anyone does, it's not lesser. It's not of no value. It's good. In fact, you can have people doing Christian work. You can have people being a pastor, a preacher, a missionary, and their work is done entirely for themselves or to please other people or impress other people. Whereas on the other hand, you could have someone sweeping streets, painting walls, washing dishes, changing diapers, and they're doing it for the Lord. Whose work is more holy? It's this one, isn't it? So you can do good more than a pastor or a missionary if you're doing it for the Lord and he is not. And yet, when you do good, you will often suffer wrong. You'll encounter injustice, unfairness. You'll not get promoted. You'll be overlooked. And here is this great comfort. You will receive back from the Lord. The Lord is keeping score. And the Lord will pay whatever has been lost. May not be in this world. Maybe in the world to come. But we're promised here, if we work, even if no one sees us, even if no one appreciates our work, even if others who don't do such good work and do it for themselves get promoted and praised and complimented and credited, the Lord will repay one way or another. So, in this passage, we have this seriousness of our everyday work. We're to do with fear and trembling. We have the integrity of our daily work. We're to do it with a sincere heart. The consistency of our work. We're to do it as to the Lord. The identity of our work is here as bondservants of Christ. The significance of our work is done here. That it is being seen by him and will be rewarded by him. The energy of our work is seen here. It's from the heart. The attitude of our work is here for the audience of Christ. And the hope of our work is here. He will reward. And when all these things are brought together, you can, whatever job you have, whether you're paid or unpaid, whether in employment or retired, whatever we do in our daily lives, with our heads or with our hands, can be worship. Because it's not about what we do. It's about who we are doing it for. So that's the employees. What about the employers? Well, this is briefer, and we'll see why in a minute. But their command is to lead humbly. Employers lead humbly under Christ. The employee is to serve as to Christ, and the employer is to lead under Christ as his representative. And so we see here, give what you expect. The verse 9 begins with, masters, do the same to them. So he's saying, look back, bosses, managers, supervisors, business owners. Look back at what we've just covered. And you can see there certain standards about work. It's to be serious. It's to be done with integrity and consistency and energy and with the right aim and with the right hope and so on and so forth. And it's saying, you bring these same qualities into your role as the master, as the authority in this relationship. What you expect them to give to you, in the same way, share that as you command and instruct and direct. Secondly, it says drop the threats. Verse 9, do the same to them and stop your threatening. Now, this is not saying that there can never be consequences in our work if we fail to obey repeatedly. It's not saying that an employer doesn't have as a tool at his disposal corrective measures or even dismissal. But it's saying that the atmosphere of this workplace should not be one of terror, of abuse, of threatening. Now, today, if in the past bosses were maybe viewed as tyrants, today maybe the employees have become the tyrants and the bosses have become the servants. I was hearing recently of a large company that was trying to address some, miscommunication between the bosses and the workers. And the workers were saying, no, they never consult us. They don't seek our input. They don't ask us what we think before they make decisions. And everyone was nodding along. Yeah, that's right. And then this one person said, I actually don't expect that. I'm here as an employee, and I'm here to do what I'm told. And yeah, of course there are situations where information would help me to do my job, but I don't see the bosses have an obligation to explain every decision to me. And the person leading the training said, I've never heard of such a thing before. And so you see how the pendulum has swung so far. But even so, employers are told here, there shouldn't be a reign of terror while still allowing correction, discipline, dismissal where necessary. And then we have remember who's boss. Employers have to remember they too have a master who is in heaven. And he's saying to them, look, you're going to have a lot of power, you're going to have a lot of influence, you're going to be tempted to abuse it, but you won't if you remember who you are managing for, who you are bossing for. Remembering that you too will have to give an account. And then lastly here, play no favorites. There's no partiality with him, it says. And that means as we manage people, as we lead people, as we employ people, that favoritism is not shown depending on a person's loudness or their own threats or their status or their wealth. There is to be equal treatment of those under our authority, so that the quiet person is not overlooked and the loud person isn't always rewarded. So we come back to our question, how can I turn my work into worship? And the answer is, when Christ is the audience, work becomes worship. Again, notice it's not what you do. The work in a way is irrelevant. It's who you do it for. That's how you can extend Sunday into the rest of the week. That's how you can connect worship with work. That's how you can elevate your work, no matter how difficult, dirty, disliked it is. This attitude will change the way we work. It will stop us trying to escape work. It will stop us just enduring work. It will stop us idolizing work and trying to find our worth in our work. As long as we always remember, whether employee or employer, Christ is the audience. That smashes this wall between the secular and the sacred. That elevates work into the realm of worship as done for the Lord, to the Lord, as though he was standing right beside our computer screen, our shovel, our paintbrush, our conveyor belt, our diaper table. We're doing it for him. And it becomes worship. What an encouragement to us as we go through our daily lives. When you hear this as an employee or an employer, what do you think? Failure? Yep. Not lived up to this? Yep. Lived and worked many days without doing it, with Christ being the audience? Yep. Our work is imperfect. Whether employer or employee, our work is tainted all through with sin. And therefore, yes, we seek to offer our work to Christ as worship, but we recognize it's flawed and it's full of failures and faults. And therefore, we don't come with our work and say, "Am I good?" We come with Christ's work and say, "Isn't he good?" When we see how flawed and failed our own work is, that it could never earn us a place in heaven, the joy is we can turn away from all our work, leave it in the background and say, my only hope of heaven is the person and work of Jesus Christ, the perfect employee, the one who did the will of the Lord sincerely, with integrity, with energy, as for his Father, with the right aim, with the right attitude, with the right hope. And so we bring the perfect worker and his perfect work, and we lay it before the Lord, and we say, at the end of the day, this is my hope. And this covers all my work with his perfection. Let's pray.